Hey everybody, it's your buddy Beard Grizzly, and let's talk about Warmind! What, you didn't think I wouldn't cover this, right? Right? Anyway, I'm kidding. I do want to cover this, however, but I will warn you all now. There'll be spoilers ahead. I'll give you a hint before I do cover said spoilers, so for now, I'm gonna have regular old gameplay in the background before we get to that territory. Before we get started, I know that this is a little delayed. Forgive me, only because I have been so socked full of actual work. It took me a little while to actually get some time to make this up. Even then, I'm just pushing through and basically killing my sleep schedule, but whatever. I want to make sure that this is actually out for you guys before I get into other theories and just get this off my chest. Anyway, let's move on. First off, there were a few things that weren't talked about in great detail over the livestream. Like it was before, the raid lair wasn't discussed or looked at all, and this is mainly to keep it a surprise like the last one, for what that may mean for us. Judging by the topics and the enemies that are involved this time around, however, I'm sure we can guess it's related to them. Again, keeping things a little vague for now, just trying to keep the spoilers away for a little bit longer. Even though my Twitter has completely killed that notion if you follow me, but whatever. Not a Twitter plug, just saying there's a lot of bits that are worth keeping a surprise if you want them to be. The major key takeaways to keep in mind are location and general overview. As speculated before, we're going back to Mars, but this time we're heading to the southern hemisphere where it seems a Warmind structure has been housed. Early photos also show off some Clovis Bray stuff, but I'll get to that in a moment. The location is the Hellas Basin, a place that holds a fair amount of mystery for NASA and others today. This is the site of an impact crater, one of the largest in our solar system. The basin is pretty deep as well, going as far as about 4 kilometers deep. For reference, the Grand Canyon is about 1.6 kilometers deep. The crater is also over 2,000, almost 3,000 kilometers really in diameter, so this is a pretty big place just for reference. Where we are exactly within the basin is a bit unknown, at least for now, but what we do know is the basin is subject to water and water ice possibilities. We're unsure exactly, but we found traces of water already on Mars, or so we believe. Anyway, before I get into the overall details of Mars, a place we've already been to in Destiny 1 and are kind of familiar with, I just wanted to outline a little of the terrain we'll be in. Granted, the ice caps that were around are apparently melting from warsats raining down from the sky. Poor ice caps. There's definitely some other details that I'm leaving out here of Hellas Basin, and you can certainly look them up on your own if you're interested. I'm just trying to keep a lot of that science away since I know I'm going to be digging into it a little bit later, at least in other videos, I guess, more than anything. Anyway, at this point, we'll get into the spoilers. That's about all I can think of to really cover as a basic overview. Some of the stuff I'm about to cover is also covered on the stream told to us by Brent Gibson, one of the game directors from Vicarious Visions. Last chance in case you don't want spoilers. Okay, here we go. So I should have mentioned this earlier, but the Hellas Basin is not in the southernmost region or polar point on Mars. It is definitely in the southernmost hemisphere, and it's definitely lower down in location, but it is not the actual pole. Keep that in mind as we go along. I did mention, however, that these ice caps are melting in the Hellas Basin. These ice caps going down open up and reveal a facility, one that's related to Clovis Bray. This is called the Braytech Futurescape, or as Gibson says shorthand on the stream, the Scape. This is the cradle of invention, the place most exoscience is apparently built up within Clovis Bray's vast network of scientists, technicians, and engineers. It may also be where SIVA and other off-world tech are pretty well put together or built, and this kind of calls back to something like Owl Sector or something similar to that with what we saw with Dr. Shirazi. Parts of or the whole of the Exodus project may have also been birthed here, which means we could see some more backstory on Exodus Black and Failsafe for all we know. It's just a thought. Within this facility is the Warmind we all know and love, Rasputin. There's some really weird terminology that's being used so far to dictate his position within the facility, as Gibson says that Rasputin is at least born here. The question is if he's being housed here, which if you're following along with lore, opens up some questions about what exactly we're kind of dealing with on Earth and why we needed to do the last Array mission where we allowed Rasputin to go out into the system and connect with the other planets. Mars was one of them after all, so was it literally a phone home kind of circumstance? Rasputin phone home. Anyway, this facility seems to house the core of Rasputin, and the idea of him being born here may just mean that that's where he was built. We're not too sure from the info told to us so far. We're also still not sure if this means that Charlemagne is completely out of the books at this point just yet either, so we'll have to keep our eyes and ears open for any info once it arrives. Until we get the DLC, I don't want to jump to any conclusions, but it's more just to let you guys know to keep your eyes and ears open. Additionally, I'm wondering if, with the new information we have of Fellwinter from the Fellwinter's Guile lore entry, if there's any extra information we can learn about him. A few things to think back on as we go into launch. But hey, that's enough about the facility. Let's actually move into the protagonist and our main vendor for the expansion, Ana Bray. Yeah, okay, laugh it up while you can. So we got something and called it wrong. Before I get into this one, for the reminder of what had happened here, let's talk about Ana herself. First off, let's talk about her appearance. Her outfit is very similar to that of a hunter, minus the hood at least at first look. It's there, just pretty well matted down. One interesting piece to note is her eyes. They're seen to be cybernetic of some kind, and this harkens back to a mission back in Destiny 1 during Rise of Iron. It's called Download Complete. It's where we go into Clovis Bray to discover a weakness in the way that Siva is built.
Interesting. There were multiple prototypes, each programmed to serve a different function. One that built constructs, viral armor enhancements, that's neat. And we have a winner, cybernetic diagnostics.
That last bit about cybernetic engineering is the most interesting part, since we're seemingly dealing with cybernetic eyes, at least on Ana. We know that Clovis Bray has a lot to do with Exo, so perhaps this was another project they were working on. The comparison has been made all over Twitter and elsewhere, so it's been hard for me to trace down who made the comparison before, but these eyes being somewhat related to Celestial Nighthawk doesn't seem entirely out of the realm of possibility. As we know from lore before, and in Shaq's words, Ana is a golden gunner. Just for reference, this is part of the No Time to Explain questline that we experience in The Taken King. You want another story about the Twilight Gap? Ana Bray, the hunter. We all dug deep that day. We all touched the light in ways we never thought we could, or should. Ana, though, when she fired the gun where her golden blast hit home, she left behind the pools of light, like splashes of sunlight that burned and burned. Lord Shax. What's interesting to note is what comes a bit later in this questline when you return a bracelet to Lakshmi. Let me see what you... A bracelet. With the symbol of House Bray? Ana Bray's personal sigil. Guardian, the Inner Circle will be grateful that you return this artifact to the tower. And now, what? A ring? With the symbol of the Warlock Pajari? Death again. Like Ana Bray, a Guardian fallen to the second death, lost to us. We shall study these objects, Guardian. Learn why they have been pulled through time. Lakshmi too. I just wanted to recount the reason for why I feel Ana was dead to begin with, even before the DLC was announced. Though we know hunters are good at keeping their deaths hidden, there needs to be an extra answer somewhere to how she escaped or what else is going on with her. It can even be a simple one, but some reason would be pretty cool, especially with a listing like this from quest dialogue in the past from D1. It's a pretty prominent quest, so I don't know, Bungie. Make it happen. The Clovis Bray ID card that she also carries with her does seem to show her face as we see her today, so I'm going to say that the one in the picture and the Ana that we see here are the same person, though I'd be colored impressed if it was someone different altogether. Wouldn't that be something if this was just a Guardian that latched on to someone from the past and fashioned herself to look like her? And my brain's wandering again. We do see a similar idea of two Guardians knowing their names. These two are Himura Shinobu and Cade. Both had journals with which to reference, with Shinobu's death and resurrection possibly being right alongside one another. If Ana has found a bit of her past to recover, she would be the next one in line of Guardians remembering her past. If you can't tell, I'm definitely interested in where the Ana story is going, and I'm hoping it goes somewhere. Another reference I've seen pointed out to me was the markings on Ana's face. They look very familiar to a certain awoken prince. I'm wondering what these markings mean. Perhaps Uldren Sov was also a Clovis Bray in the past? Or is it just a coincidence? Not that I believe in those too often anymore. The equipment that she's wearing is also similar to what we saw in the original teaser image posted to us all the way back in December, though the coloring is quite a bit lighter than I thought it was going to be. Not significant, but it does have a researcher or scientist type feel to it. I'm sure that plays a bit more into the overall character a bit, being that the ID card pegs her as an MD. Still, let's move on. Maybe we can discuss Ana in greater depth later on if I think of much else to say about her before launch. Even then, afterward, I'm sure that I have a feeling that she'll end up being a character profile for us to examine at least. Before I get too far, there are a couple events and equipment sets to point out involving Rasputin. For equipment, most of what we're getting is Warmind themed. I'm not going to focus too heavily on this stuff, but all the weapons we've seen pop up thanks to the guys that went out to the summit all contain the word Akelos. If you're not familiar, this is actually the same protocol that was active on the Sleeper Simulant back in D1. This is just a Rasputin staple. Thanks to Mylan Games for bringing that information back, by the way, because that's definitely opened up a little bit of a window for me at least into some previews and so on. Moving on to events. All of them are cooperative events, with the major one being touted in the livestream being called Escalation Protocol. This event has you being helped by Rasputin, corralling a group of Hive to be killed off and end a bit of Hive power. What's interesting to note is as you ascend through the waves of enemies, we're going to see other enemies pop up, more powerful ones as you go through these waves. They've hinted there will be larger named enemies by the end of it all, with one major boss that changes throughout the week. So we might see some names of interest throughout this event. Lastly are two new strikes. One called Will of the Thousands, which the name alone is intriguing when you start to kind of think about the world's grave, or perhaps just Rasputin and his position as a mind in general, but I digress. The other is called Strange Terrain, and this is where things get weird. This image is from the website DestinyTheGame.com, just so you're aware that this is 100% Bungie published information. The description of the strike reads, "Descend deep into the tunnels under Hela's Basin and take the fight to the Herald of Zol. Stop this Hive Prince before he can funnel more power to the Worm God." This gives me a couple hints, actually. One, we're dealing with someone of great import, since it's the title of a prince. We'll get there in a second. Two, Zol is actually within our system and on Mars. It is also possibly rather weak with being within the ice on Mars for a longer time, but that's speculation. We're not exactly sure on this one. Granted, I've got my thoughts on it and all, but I'll leave them there for now because that gets really in-depth. If you're not familiar with worm gods, since I know Destiny 2 hasn't explained them very well, let's just say that they're what the Hive worship. They are necessary for the Hive to stay alive and necessary for the Hive's everlasting life. If you want to really dig into it, look into the term Faustian bargain. That'll explain enough, or at least give you more information, I think. There are some other photos circulating around about this Hive Prince, but this is the only other one I was able to dig up. There is something very interesting about this, however, and it's of a story we've been looking for more info on for some time. This, again, is on the main website. The Hive group is called the Grasp of Nokris. The site reads, "These fanatical followers of Zol have been dormant in the frozen wastes of Mars for centuries. Now they claw their way to the surface, intent on conquering and consuming in the name of their god. What we know is that Nokris is here. Supposedly, thanks to the fact that this wizard we see floating around is called a prince, we may be able to assume this is Nokris. Both he and Zol are in a possibly weakened state, especially with being dormant under the ice for so long. Nokris is significant because the only piece of lore and hints we have on him so far were from the Dreadnought in Destiny 1.
The markings suggest this is a Hive god, but I don't recognize the symbol. Nothing in the World's Grave file either. The name is Nokris.
This is all we've had to go by. Why was his name not listed in the World's Grave, the catalog for all Hive information and all worlds conquered? Was he a willing omission? Was he cut from the records for some other reason? Did he break off from Oryx and take Xol for himself? I'll have to dig a bit further, especially back through Toland and his records, but I'm very interested to see where this story takes us. And again, the speculation that this prince is Nokris should still be referenced and brought up. It's not confirmed that this is Nokris, but it's a pretty valid reason to suggest that it is. My main concerns for the story so far are somewhat substantial, but that gives me a bit more hope that we'll understand and hear an explanation of what's going on with those elements, since they seem to be pretty big questions. The first is, obviously, about Ana and how she's alive. I really hope they make it a point to explain her backstory a bit more, so we know where she went, how she stayed hidden. If this is the case, a group like Aphrodite's being off on their own and hidden away is a bit more plausible, though a single traveling hunter is a whole different matter versus a group of guardians or otherwise that are trying to stay hidden. Rasputin needs an explanation. The idea that he was born on Mars is completely okay. I just feel that knowing how he got to Earth and might have had his consciousness or core trapped there would require a little explanation. That may just be me, however. Further understanding Xol, a worm god of all things, being trapped under the ice along with Nokris and his cronies, this needs a lot of explanation. I have my own theory on what's going on with this, which I do hope to get out to you guys before Warmind is released and see if my thoughts actually have any bearing on what we'll see from the story, but when you deal with the Hive at all and having a worm god around to boot, you have to think about tithing and such to ensure that that Hive stays alive and functional. There are a few other minor concerns, but they're less pressing. These three really need some answers, and I hope to hear from Bungie about them, either immediately or down the line. Definitely some cool stuff going on here, and I'm definitely curious to see what they do, but all the same, I've got those worries in place, and I am definitely keeping my optimism very tempered. We'll see what it is that they accomplish with this DLC, since, again, the bit with Xol and the bit with Nokris would definitely have a lot of questions that need answering. I think I'll leave things there for now. I have some theories and thoughts that I need to rip into a bit more, but I'll get there as soon as I can. There's actually a lot here to theorize on even before the DLC is out. For now, what are you guys looking forward to most, if anything at all? Do you have any theories surrounding Ana, Rasputin, Nokris, or anyone else, or anything else? I'll give it a read below in the comments. Otherwise, if you enjoyed what you heard, you know the buttons to press. If you do decide to subscribe and stick around, don't forget about the bell for notifications, and do this for all of the content creators that you enjoy most. YouTube doing YouTube things. Otherwise, thanks for listening to my rambling, and I'll see you next Spacetime, Guardians. Take care.